Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here with Korea. We're a couple days out from March, so we got conference tournaments starting this week in college basketball. We got the final stretch of the NBA season, and then we got spring training games that started in the last week or so for baseball. And that's what today is going to be about is previewing the AL. Wednesday will be the NL. How was your weekend, Korea?
It was good. It was good. As you mentioned, we have some spring training games underway. Obviously, as of Friday, we got to see the Mariners get the first win of the young season, like a preseason win. So, even though it was preseason or spring training, Mariners baseball or whoever team you support, baseball is back, and we're pretty much about a month away from the regular season. You talk about spring training. We have one of the best spectacles, the WBC. That's starting up in literally about a week, and when you said March is here, and conference tournaments are today. We're gonna get into some of the bigger ones on Friday, and then we're just getting ready for baseball today, and we're just gonna be looking at the American League, and I'm excited because this American League is definitely a lot more competitive than I believe in the last few years.
Yeah, so let's just start with the AL East. Last year Yankees won the division. Blue Jays were kind of a popular, trendy favorite to win heading into last season, but the Yankees won pretty convincingly by 7 games. Blue Jays finished second, followed by Tampa Bay, Orioles, and the Red Sox in last. The Yankees, Blue Jays, and Rays all made the playoffs. Orioles just missed out on the wild card. Um, and then this year, as DraftKings, as of today, the Yankees are the favorite to win the division again, followed by the Blue Jays, Rays, Red Sox, and Orioles. Um, Obviously, the Yankees, the big addition was Carlos Rodon for the Yankees and also reselling Aaron Judge. The Blue Jays brought in Dalton Varsho from the Diamondbacks. They signed Vernon Belt. And I believe Bassett and Barrios. Rays are kind of mostly the same team overall in terms of like their main core. They're always going to be, the team that doesn't have the most talent on paper, but they're always going to be a tough out, obviously. Orioles were kind of surprised that they didn't make many moves. There's thought that just given how close they were to making the playoffs last year, they were going to make at least one that kind of big splash signing. That didn't happen. And then the Red Sox, Kenley Jansen. They got Masatsuka Yoshida from Japan. Korea, what's kind of your outlook overall on this division heading into the season?
Yeah, I'm going to go start from the bottom up here, and I'm going to start with the Red Sox. They finished last place last year, and look, they lost Xander Bogaerts, and that's a huge loss for this Red Sox team. Obviously, first it was that 2018 team, which had Mookie Betts and Devers, Bogarts, all the talent, and it feels like it's slowly going away. Obviously, they somehow signed Devers to a massive contract, so he's I guess stuck there, but the offseason for this Red Sox team was, okay, which one are they going to keep? Is it Devers or is it going to be Bogarts? Because they couldn't keep both, and it had to come to one, and Bogarts left, and obviously he's in San Diego now. And this Red Sox team is confusing because they don't have a pitching staff. Obviously, Chris Sale is their pitching staff after Eovaldi's gone, and all their stars are leaving now. And now Chris Sale is, who is very injury prone, is their star guy. And that's always a big risk. It's always a big risk to depend on Chris Sale to be a starter, a consistent starter in the MLB. So I feel like this Red Sox team is kind of going to be around 80 something wins. I feel like in terms of who they got, they got Justin Turner. You talk about Yoshida from Japan. They brought in Kenley Jansen. They brought in some key pieces, but I feel like losing Xander Bogaerts was just such a big loss, for that infield. And, even though they have nice bats, they don't have a good pitching staff. So, and obviously they have to depend on some of their guys like Tristan Casas, one of their best prospects, NLA Rookie of the Year candidate. They're going to depend on some of those young guys to really step up. So, for this Red Sox team, I can definitely see them winning about 80 games. I don't really see anything more than that just because, they don't have a good pitching staff. And, that's going to be a huge factor, in a very, very friendly, division where they love to just smash and hit the ball with guys like Aaron Judge and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Giancarlo Stanton, George Springer, and, all those guys. So Boston, I feel like even though they don't have a pitching staff, I feel like even though they have a decent lineup, they don't really have a pitching staff, and that's going to be a big factor for that Red Sox team. Moving on to the Orioles, you mentioned this Orioles team had an amazing run. A lot of people were comparing them to the 2021 Seattle Mariners, who broke all the expectations of what they were supposed to be, and they came up just a bit short because the teams in front of them were just simply better. Let's just say it like that. And, there was a lot of expectation for Baltimore to really get some big key guys, to come to Baltimore and be a part of that, that resurgence. And they did not do anything. Their biggest offseason signing was Adam Frazier. And, obviously former Seattle Mariner who had a clutch hit for us. But let's be real here. Like, they didn't make any big moves or big signings. And, it's kind of weird to see that from a team that was literally that first team out of the playoffs on an incredible run. But, I feel like, Baltimore has put a lot of trust in their young guys, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, that's the future for Baltimore right now. And, they have one of the best bullpens with Felix Bautista. He's an all-star. The pitching staff is decent, and then you look at the rotation, and it's just not at the level of a playoff contending team. You thought, oh, well, maybe they can get an ace or two, someone, at least on maybe a veteran minimum or something like that to come play for Baltimore, and they didn't get that. So I feel like this Baltimore team definitely regressed a little bit in this offseason, just in terms of not adding to what they should have added onto in terms to be a really competitive team, because we see it. They have one of the best bullpens in baseball. They have a very exciting young, catcher who's going to be a top 5 catcher in baseball, and Adley Rutschman. They have another AL Rookie of the Year candidate with Gunnar Henderson at short. They have a bunch of futuristic guys, but they definitely are lacking on veteran leaders, or maybe Adam Frazier is. I don't know. We'll see how this Orioles team does. And then we move up to the Rays. And the Rays, obviously, they did lose Mike Zunino, who went to Cleveland. But at the same time, this Rays team is, still competitive enough to make the playoffs for one of the sole reasons being that they have one of the better pitching staffs in baseball. I mean, when you look at Shane McClanahan, right? You look at Drew Rasmussen, you look at Jeffrey Springs, right? They have guys who can consistently throw heat, and then not to mention a not over the top lineup, but a lineup that can get it done when it matters. I mean, Yandy Diaz can get it done. I mean, if 2020 postseason Randy Arozarena was in that lineup, they'd be they'd be a division contender every single season. They still have Wander Franco. That's the big, future of this Tampa Bay Rays organization. That's what, everyone's raving about, him being one of the better shortstop. And obviously he is definitely. They have Francisco Mejia, who one of the better catchers in baseball. Those two also on the Dominican Republic team, probably going to be starting in the lineups. They did lose Ji-Man Choi, but they still have Brandon Lau, and they still have most of those guys from their 2020 postseason World Series run before they lost to the Dodgers in the World Series. But they still have most of those guys, and even though they don't have Blake Snell, they still have Kevin Cash, and they still have a great rotation. So this Tampa Bay Rays team is always going to be a contender if they can just stay healthy and the bats can get going. I feel like they're definitely going to be a lock for a playoff team. And then I feel like the other two teams are the Blue Jays and Yankees. And it's been hard for me to really say who a division winner is going to be because of these two teams. You look at the Blue Jays, right, and or as I like to call them, the Seattle Mariners sons. And you look at the Blue Jays, right, and any Blue Jay fans that want to smoke, come at me. I'm respectfully, you guys are our sons, but. You look at this team, right, and they have a dominant lineup. You get automatically there, and they added on top of it. You mentioned they traded for Dalton Varsho. They also signed Brandon Bell. They also signed Kevin Kiermaier. And they filled most of the roles that they kind of needed to fill. I mean, considering they already had a top lineup, and it's just got better, in my opinion. It definitely got a lot better. You can see that from top to bottom, right? Alejandro Kirk behind the plate, Vladdy at first base. They have, we're going to have Espinal at second, probably. Then shortstop.
They traded for Whit Merrifield.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot they traded for Whit Merrifield before the deadline. They have Bo Bichette at short. They have Matt Chapman at third base. And then the outfield, obviously, with George Springer. And then Kevin Kiermaier now. And, it just shows you, and now Dalton Varsho as well, who's also a catcher as well. So they have a complete lineup. And they got Chris Bassett in the offseason, too, who had a great season with the Mets after he got traded there from Oakland. And I feel like if the Blue Jays window is right now. The Blue Jays have opened the window, right? And the window is open. This is their time. I feel like it's obviously just going to be hard because they got to compete with the Yankees, who also did get a little better in the offseason. But I feel like the Blue Jays definitely had one of the better offseasons in terms of how they collapsed to the Seattle Mariners in the postseason. I love saying that. After the collapse to the Seattle Mariners, there were a bunch of questions. Obviously, who would have thought, if that maybe Bo Bichette or George Springer would have caught that ball, who knows where they could have been and what and all that stuff. But that didn't happen. Anyways, I feel like this Blue Jays team definitely addressed all the problems they needed to. They have the only lingering problem is Jose Barrios. He obviously had a really, really down season. We don't know what kind of Jose Barrios we're going to get in 2023. So that's a big question mark. But, I feel like, the Toronto Blue Jays have definitely had a good offseason. As a Mariners fan, it's hard for me to say that. But, I mean, they definitely had a good offseason. And then the Kings of the AL East, the New York Yankees, I mean, they had a great offseason, even though they did not do much because they kept Aaron Judge, and that's what they needed to do. I mean, obviously, there was the rumor of Aaron/Arson Judge going out to San Francisco, but that was a John Heyman mistake, and he went back over to New York, and he's going to be a New York guy for life. He's going to be the captain, and he's the guy, right? And they pair him up with the guys who are coming up, like Oswaldo Cabrera. Anthony Volpe, the guy that they are loving right now, also who's been doing great in spring training recently. They also kept Rizzo. They still have IKF at short, when they need him. They kept everyone that they needed to keep. I feel like for a team that just won the division against a stacked AL East division, I feel like that's what you needed to do. And then also getting Carlos Rodon is also like the cream on top of the castle. The Yankees have a top 5 rotation with Cole and Rodon, two aces considerably in your rotation, alongside maybe a healthy Severino, who could come back this year. The Yankees are going to be always a contender, and their window is open, but I'd say it's not wide open because the window is shrinking. And I feel like it's been shrinking slowly ever since their first run with the 2017 Bang Bang Astros. I feel like the window's been closing ever since, because after that 4-0 sweep last year in the ALCS to the Astros, I mean, I feel like they have to only get better from there, and that being contending for a World Series spot and being actually a team that can beat the Astros. So I feel like if this is not the year, then the window is slowly closing ever since. Luckily, yes, they did get Aaron Judge to stay, but I feel like this Yankees team, excuse me, will forever be at least a top 2 team in this division the way it's panning out right now. In terms of my predictions, early predictions, I would have the Orioles finishing last, and then the Red Sox at 4, and then I have the Rays at 3. I have the Blue Jays at 2, close to this time, and then to number 1, the New York Yankees, the kings of the AL East once again.
Yeah, I mean, even though the Rays will always be, right there competitive, I think it's pretty clear Pretty clearly between the Blue Jays and Yankees at the top. The Yankees, they did lose Frankie Montas. At first, it seemed like it might be for the season, shoulder surgery, but it sounds like now he might be able to return like after the All-Star break by like July or August. So maybe he'll be back at least by the playoffs. But I mean, even without him, I mean, you got Cole and Rodon at the top, and then you still got Cortez, Severino, and German. So it's a pretty strong five still. Obviously, there is still some injury concern with Severino. Cortez is banged up. He had to drop out of the World Baseball Classic, so there is some injury risk with them. But then obviously now you got Clay Holmes as their closer, and Louis Trevino, who they got at the deadline last year as a setup guy, I believe. So, and then obviously you got all the bats. I think the big question for them would be left field between Aaron Hicks and Oswaldo Cabrera. They have the two young Oswaldo players, Oswald Peraza at shortstop, and then Oswaldo Cabrera potentially left field, maybe platooning with Aaron Hicks, I believe. But yeah, and then with the Blue Jays, it's funny because they lost to the Mariners, and then the two teams made a trade this offseason. They already had enough bats and enough power in the lineup to where they could afford to trade Teoscar Hernandez, and then they acquired Eric Swanson, which their biggest weakness last year, or one of their weaknesses, was their bullpen. And so that got stronger this offseason, and they still, like you said, they still have Springer and Ray, and then they still have Kiermaier and Varsho in the outfield. So they're still fine in the outfield defensively and at the plate. So I think the only way the Yankees don't win the division is if the starters can't stay healthy, which is a legit concern. With Severino's injury history, Montas is already out, and then Severino and Cortez is already banged up. Not serious, but it's never good to have an injury this early, obviously. So I think I'm with you on that order. I'm not completely sure if I go Orioles or Red Sox last place, but I think those two are at the end, and behind Tampa Bay, and then Blue Jays and Yankees at the top. But I agree. I think it will be more competitive than last year. Like I said, the Blue Jays, I think, were the odds-on favorite going into last season to win the division, and the Yankees really kind of ran away with it in the end. So I do think it will be a closer race this season. So now we'll move on to the AL Central. Cleveland ran away with the division last year. White Sox and the Twins really disappointed compared to expectations. Cleveland's bringing back most of the same team. You mentioned they got Zunino behind the plate now. They also signed Josh Bell at DH. The White Sox just have to stay healthy. I mean, we saw a big step back from Giolito last year on the mound. They still have a strong bullpen. And also those guys just couldn't stay healthy. I think Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert couldn't stay healthy. There's a couple of their kind of big hitters in the lap that couldn't stay healthy. The Twins, they upgraded the rotation. They brought in Pablo Lopez, Tyler Mahle. They still have Joan Duran, the hard-throwing closer. They somehow brought back Carlos Correa after he signed with like two other teams and failed his physical, so that was a crazy. And then they just need Buxton to stay healthy in center field. Obviously, they signed Joey Gallo as well. And then you got the Tigers and Royals pretty far at the bottom. Curry, what's your prediction and overview of this division?
Yeah, the AL Central is definitely, I would say, the weaker division of all the three American League divisions. You look at the bottom right, and you look at Detroit, and good Lord, I feel sorry for Tiger fans. They are definitely suffering right now. There's not any bright outlook for this Tiger team. I guess they're really hoping for a big bounce back season for Spencer Torkelson, who's the star first baseman that who's taken number one and had all the hype, and had a really down first year last year, and everyone's hoping he bounces back, and Riley Green as well, the outfielder, a lot of hype for him. So, but Detroit is definitely at the bottom of the barrel in this division compared to where the division lies, and then up there, you have Kansas City as well. And, the Royals are definitely, I think trying to compete, but at the same time, I guess just doing their own thing. I mean, they have still have Greinke, obviously. And they brought in Aroldis Chapman, but I mean, this is like 30-something-year-old Aroldis Chapman, not the phenom that we saw back in Cincinnati. And then, and then obviously they have Bobby Witt Jr., the phenom. Everyone's hyped around him just because, he was definitely a Rookie of the Year candidate last year, but was he Rookie of the Year? No, he was not. That's the King, Julio Rodriguez. But he definitely had a great season. He's fast on the base path. That's undeniable. So I feel like the Royals are just trying to build for their future after everyone from their 2015 and 16 World Series runs. No, 2014 and 15, excuse me, World Series runs. I feel like they're just trying to rebuild from those times, and they're definitely starting on the right path, but they're not going to be playing in competitive baseball. And then we have the top 3 teams in the division, and 2 of them just can't stay healthy, and we know who those 2 teams are. The Twins. Look, Byron Buxton is an MVP candidate every year, but the reason he's not is because he gets injured every single year, and we've seen him. He can drill the ball. He loves the high heaters. He just drills those to left field. We've seen it all the time. He has a power at the plate. He has speed on the base paths. He's definitely one of the better. He's definitely one of the best players on that team. And then obviously they brought back Carlos Correa after, first he went to San Fran and then he went to the Mets, and now he's back. He did a whole triangle for no reason. And then obviously the failed physicals and all that stuff got exposed. So we don't know how healthy his knee really is or whatever, but that was a big get back for this Twins team after Carlos Correa opted out very early of his contract, because he did originally sign a 1-year opt-out contract and he opted out, and then everyone's like, oh well, Carlos Correa, he still has a chance to go back, and he did go back, and I feel like that's definitely a big get. You also signed Joey Gallo, but Joey Gallo's a risk because we don't know what Joey Gallo we're going to get. Are we going to get the home run king or the strikeout king? And so, I feel like this lineup for the Twins is very sufficeable and very suffice. I feel like they obviously still have power and they still have speed. But the thing is just they can't stay healthy. And then you look at the rotation, right? And Kenta, they still have stars in that rotation. And then you mentioned they just traded for Pablo Lopez. So, I mean, we get to see a full season with him in a Minnesota uniform. And they also have, you mentioned Duran, their closer, who can throw 104, ridiculous speed. They still have him as their star guy in the bullpen. So they have a good bullpen and they have a decent rotation. And, the Twins are always going to be seen as a playoff team, but they just can't stay healthy. And that's what they do it to themselves. And, especially I feel like the top 3 teams are always right there. And it always comes down to those top 3 teams every single season as well. And then you look at the White Sox and you talk about a team that literally cannot stay healthy. The White Sox, obviously, the most mid team I've ever seen ever. And there were stats to prove it. Like in their lifetime, they had a 500 record. It was just craziness. But, obviously they fired Tony La Russa, and, they definitely needed to get rid of him because he was a cancer to that organization. And the White Sox definitely have one of the better lineups. I mean, with Luis Robert can stay healthy, Eloy Jimenez can stay healthy. They're hyped about Andrew Vaughn, their upcoming guy. They just signed Andrew Benintendi, so they definitely have a lot more outfield power, especially with some speed with Benintendi as well. They obviously have a Cy Young candidate in Dylan Cease on the mound. And you mentioned Giolito and his regress, but, if they want to have any success, they need him to come back. And, obviously they would have Liam Hendriks, but obviously right now he's battling cancer and, very sensitive subject, but hopefully he can come back and, still be a star on the mound for this White Sox team. But they still definitely have a decent bullpen, but they just can't stay healthy. And that's the aid, and that's the thing with this White Sox team. They can never stay healthy. Obviously, they still have Tim Anderson, who is the electric shortstop, whatever you want to call him. He's definitely very electric. And then I feel like they're right there, right? This White Sox team is definitely right there, but the injuries pile up, and and the horrible play from Gavin Sheets just kind of regressed that team, especially how horrible he was in the outfield. Just not great at all. So I feel like for this, it's the same thing with the Twins. They have a decent lineup. They have a great bullpen and rotation, and then they also have just great bats, but they just can't beat themselves. I will say losing Jose Abreu was absolutely brutal for that team, but they probably weren't going to get him back anyways. And it's definitely going to be harder for this White Sox team to compete after regressing a little bit. And then the Guardians, they definitely took the next step after they ended the year hot. They were on that hot winning streak, winning many games, and they took the opening wild card series against Tampa Bay. They took both games after a incredible walk off from Oscar Gonzalez to send Cleveland to the next round to play the Yankees, and they made it close with the Yankees, but they couldn't finish it in Game 5 in New York, so that sent the Yankees on to the ALCS. But this Guardians team definitely got a lot better in the places they needed to get better, and that was their batting order. Because yes, they have Jose Ramirez, who's an MVP candidate every year. Yes, they have Steven Kwan, who's a flashy rookie who has the speed, and he can get on base anytime. But at the same time, they definitely needed someone who can hit the ball. They have Andres Jimenez as well, but they needed someone who can hit the ball out the ballpark. And they brought in two power hitters, in Mike Zunino and Josh Bell. And I feel like this Cleveland team definitely got a lot better in terms of their batting. Their rotation obviously is still one of the best in baseball, with Shane Bieber and Kyle Quantrill and those guys in the rotation for the Guardians. And then obviously with Clase in the bullpen, one of the best relievers in baseball, if not the best reliever in baseball. I feel like the Guardians are definitely a favorite to win this AL Central again, just because they didn't go backwards, they only went forwards. And I would love to see how Josh Bell really fits with this Guardians team, after his days from Washington and going to San Diego. And obviously he brings the power in his bat. And then Mike Zunino, obviously the strikeout king in Seattle, turned home run savior in Tampa Bay. I don't know which Mike Zunino we're going to get this year for this Guardians team, but definitely it feels like this Guardians team did not go backwards at all. They should be the favorites to win this AL Central, and I have them winning it. I have them finishing first, and I'm going to have the White Sox at 2. I have Minnesota at 3, and then the Royals at 4, and then Detroit at 5 for the AL Central.
Yeah, I mean, the Guardians are one of my favorite kind of future bets. They're at right now plus 135 on DraftKings to win the division, and I thought because it's like a smaller difference between them in second place versus the AL East. I thought it would be closer in the AL Central. I thought it would be closer in the AL East and the AL Central, but it's the other way around. Last year the Guardians were like just a super gritty kind of small ball, great pitching team, and they were fun to watch. And I think that like I said, they brought back most of the same team, with the exception of a couple additions, which obviously are only going to help them. One of my favorite pitchers to watch last year was Tristan McKenzie in their rotation. And so they got him back, obviously, behind Bieber, Quantrill, Savali, Plesac, and then their strong bullpen. So the Guardians are definitely one of my favorite kind of future bets to win the AL Central. Like we were saying, the White Sox and Twins are right there talent-wise, but being able to put together over a full season is what's kind of holding them back. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a closer race, not like double digits for the Guardians, but I like them a lot, again, to win the division. Kind of playing the similar style. So obviously, they have the power now with Jose Ramirez, and like you said, Josh Bell and Mike Zunino, but they also have guys that can hit for contact, and I like that kind of balance that they have in their lineup last season and also this season. So now we'll move on to the last division, the AL West. Obviously, you have the defending World Series champions, Houston Astros. They lost Verlander, but they still have a strong rotation. Of course, you have our Mariners broke the playoff drought last year. Big additions were Colton Wong and Teoscar Hernandez. And then now you get a full season of Luis Castillo, of course, and another year of Julio Rodriguez, of course. The Angels and Rangers are kind of the two wild cards. They both made additions. Rangers, of course, brought in DeGrom this offseason. And Eovaldi, right? Eovaldi wasn't on their team last year. DeGrom and Eovaldi. So obviously you have that ace now that they didn't have last year. And then the Angels were mostly about kind of depth. They brought in Tyler Anderson. They brought in Hunter Renfroe, so they have a little more power in their lineup. And obviously, you still have Trout and Ohtani. When you have those two healthy, you can win any game. The problem for Trout, obviously, has been staying healthy. And then you have Oakland all the way at the bottom. What's your kind of outlook for this division? Do you think Houston kind of runs away with it again, or do you think a team like the Mariners can make it at least more competitive this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna go from bottom to top again, and Oakland. Well, it's hard.
It's like the Moneyball phrase with them, where it's like you have rich teams and you have poor teams, then you have 50 feet of crap, and then
exactly. Exactly. The Oakland A's, it's not enjoyable at Oco right now. I mean, yes, they did sign Jace Peterson and Jesus Aguilar, but, everyone from that 2018 wildcard team is gone. Olsen's gone. Chapman's gone. Simeon's gone. Everyone's gone. Everyone is gone. And Oakland, they're just looking to the future. This is going to be the worst team in baseball behind the Nationals. This is going to be a horrible A's team. I don't expect, considering they had like maybe 5% of people show up to games all year, this is going to be bad. They did spend money, which is good, considering last season they did not spend any money in the offseason. Absolutely. Last season, we could have said that we spent the same amount of money as the Oakland A's in the offseason because they didn't spend a dime. So this year, I say anything is better than last offseason. So a decent offseason for the A's, but it's like moving half an inch up the Richter scale. Like, it's not doing anything. And then we go to the top four teams, and the Rangers are interesting. Yes, they got DeGrom, but DeGrom's health is a big risk, and you can't really guarantee that. Yes, they brought in Eovaldi. That's great. But at the same time, he's probably going to be the ace, considering DeGrom will probably be injured at some time this year. Yes, they brought back Perez, but, we don't know which Martin Perez we're going to get. Are we going to get the one from last year or the regular Martin Perez who averages like a 3 to 4 ERA? And then in terms of their lineup, who else do they really have? They have Adolis Garcia, and he's off and on. And they have
last year Nathaniel Lowe was really good for them.
I want to say Nathaniel Lowe, their kind of star, I guess, at first base, a top 10 first baseman, kind of rising the ranks just because of his hitting. But, his fielding is not great, but, he definitely has it at the plate. And then, the how do I say this? The $1 billion infield between Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. They definitely regressed last season, but, for Marcus Semien, he's still a top 10 second baseman, and Corey Seager, he definitely had a down year, but he's definitely one of the better shortstops in this league. I
like with the ban of the shift. I think that's going to help Seager a lot, because that was what hurt him a lot last year, was like hitting hard contact just right into the shift. So I think he's going to be, if not one of if not the biggest kind of beneficiary of that, one of those rule changes.
Yeah, because now with the shift ban, guys like Joey Gallo and Corey Seager can actually, have more, contact that goes down in the outfield or whatever. And I definitely agree with you. I feel like Corey Seager is definitely going to be one of the better beneficiaries of the shift ban. So expect maybe a bigger season from him. But other than that, they did not really address any of their other problems, which is the bullpen. The Rangers have a horrible, egregious bullpen, and they did not do any major significant moves to improve it. And for them, that's why I still see them as the fourth best team in this division, because, yes, they have an ace in Jacob DeGrom who's on the mound healthy, but, that's an if he's healthy. And then you also have, a lineup that is good, but, last year it definitely regressed because of the fact that, Corey Seager did not have a good year, but I expect him to have a better year along with Marcus Semien and all of that. But at the same time, in a competitive AL West division like this, the Rangers are definitely the fourth best team to me. And then above them are the Seattle's, another son of the Seattle Mariners, the Los Angeles Angels. Oh, God. You talk about a franchise that's so sad. I mean, they always like to clown on the Mariners for being the longest playoff drought, but, I guess tables have turned because the Angels are now have the longest MLB playoff drought. So, look, Mike Trout has only one playoff appearance. Shohei Ohtani does not. Shohei Ohtani is one of the best players in baseball. In fact, MLB said that he is the best player in baseball right now. They said Mike Trout is a top 5 player in baseball right now. They have 2 of the 5 best players in baseball, and they still can't make the playoffs. Why? Oh, let's tell them why, Ari. Because this team folds like a paper bag. The Angels have always done this. You go from their lineup to their rotation to the bullpen. Yes, they got Noah Syndergaard. How did that work out for them? Oh, that's right. So I don't expect anything big from Tyler Anderson this season, who, even though, had a decent year or I guess better than what he did at the Mariners with the Dodgers last year, who's to say that he's going to be that great with the Angels? So that's a question there. And then, the lineup definitely got a lot better. They got Brandon Drury. They got Hunter Renfroe. They have guys in the lineup to replace guys like, Brandon Marsh and stuff like that. But, Mike Trout's not getting healthier, right? In fact, it came out that he is getting worse and worse because of how injury-prone Mike Trout is. And because of that, Ohtani is getting relentless, and, there's been the whole rumor of him leaving, and, it's just getting increasingly and more possible, that Ohtani is leaving the Angels after this season. I feel like this is the Angels' goodbye tour for Shohei Ohtani. You say goodbye. I say, enjoy him while it lasts, because I know for a fact that man is not coming back next year. And especially with Artie Moreno as their GM, he is definitely not coming back. So this Angels team, even though they got better in terms of how the lineup was last season, I mean, is it really better than where they were? I mean, they didn't really do much in terms of addressing one of their bigger problems was their bullpen. Obviously, Raisel Iglesias is the star of their bullpen, but other than that, there's a lot of inconsistency there. The back end of the rotation is not the greatest, even though they have Ohtani, obviously, as their ace, who will always be their ace until next year because he's not going to be there. It just comes to show you that they really rely on, Ohtani to really carry them, and, he can only do so much with what he's surrounded by. And, the Angels are definitely the third best team in this division just because of the talent they have. But it doesn't make up for the fact that this team is not in any way a playoff team this year. And I've seen a lot of people saying that the Angels are going to make the playoffs, and I have not seen any proof as to why this team is definitely now a playoff team from what they bought last year when, they were around a 500 team. And then the second best team in this division are Seattle Mariners. And that is, without a shadow of a doubt, the easiest answer. I mean, when you talk about what the Seattle Mariners, excuse me, I'm a little sick here, but talking about what the Seattle Mariners did last year, right? They broke the drought. 21 years. It was a long time coming. We've been waiting for this moment. The Mariners finally made the playoffs, right? And everyone's thinking, oh, maybe it was just a fluke, or, maybe it was just a one-time thing. But the reason it's not is because this team was a 90-win team in 2021, a 90-win team in 2022. They won 90 games back-to-back seasons. Where is that? Like, do people think that this was just a luck team? Like, the Mariners would have made the playoffs in 2021 if the standings were 2022, because the Mariners were the 5th best team in baseball in the American League. So therefore, they would have made it last year anyways, playing a wild card game against the Jays, and oh, that's right, they swept them 2-0. So This Mariners team, yes, they lost Mitch Haniger. Oh, well, they plugged him in with Teoscar Hernandez. Oh, well, Adam Frazier, that was not really a big loss, but it's still a loss. Oh, well, they brought in Colton Wong, who's a top 10 second baseman. Oh, well, what are they going to do now that Jesse Winker is now oh, God. What a oh, God. Jesse Winker, what a character. Now that he's gone, oh, well, we put a platoon in left field and we have AJ Pollock as our DH. And this team, right, the vibes are great, as according to my man Gino says, Eugenio Suarez. The vibes are good. The vibes are always great. I would love to see the emergence of maybe Evan White. That's a name Seattle Mariner fans know really well. Obviously, he was supposed to be the first baseman until Ty France came in and kind of took that role over because of his injuries. But, Evan White is definitely a lot better defensively. So maybe if Evan White stays healthy, then maybe we can see Ty France maybe move to DH and have Evan White play first base if he can hit consistently as well, because he's been raking right now in spring training. So, that there can be a platoon at first there. Cal Raleigh, who's still a top 10 catcher in the league in terms of his defensive runs saved and his power at the plate. And obviously, since he's a switch hitter, obviously makes it even more impressive. The king in center field, we all know his name. AL Rookie of the Year, say his name again, Julio Rodriguez. That name is going to be a household name. I think he's going to be a dark horse MVP candidate this year because, he only wants to take his game to the next level. And I feel like the stars are aligning. Obviously, where's the All-Star game this year? Seattle. I feel like this is the year. I feel like this is going to be a great season for this Mariner team. I expect them. I honestly think they're going to finish more than 90 wins because, as you mentioned, in terms of the rotation, this team has a top 10 rotation in baseball with Luis Castillo, who will be an AL Cy Young candidate because he will have a full season in Seattle. You have right behind him George Kirby, who had an impressive rookie campaign and who's going to take his game to the next level. You have Logan Gilbert, who can sling the ball and has a low ERA and get solid wins. You have Robbie Ray, who's a former AL Cy Young candidate, who even though loves to throw the ball right over the middle for Yordan Alvarez to hit, he's still a good pitcher. He leads the AL in strikeouts, and he definitely knows how to strike out a batter. And then Marco Gonzalez. But anyways, the bullpen is obviously very stout as well with Andres Munoz and Paul Sewald. And, I expect Casey Sadler to have a comeback year. This Mariners team is definitely winning 90-plus wins again. They're definitely going to be a playoff team, but they're not winning division because Houston, we have a problem. This team got better, and they just won the World Series. It's like that. Like, what more do you want from me? Why does Houston get to keep getting better? This team has the best 1 through 7 in baseball. Jose Altuve, Jeremy Pena, Yordan Alvarez, Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker, Michael Brantley, Jose Abreu. You cannot debate that 1 through 7 through any other 1 through 7 in baseball. That is the best 1 through 7 in baseball. Houston has bats. Yordan Alvarez is a candidate for MVP. Bregman is a solid contact hitter. Kyle Tucker is a solid contact hitter. Brantley's a solid contact hitter. Altuve has power, and he's a solid contact hitter. Pena, obviously, we saw his emergence in the postseason. And then Jose Abreu, who's a 7 hitter. 7, Ari. He's the 7 hitter. And he's a cleanup in most lineups in baseball right now. And he's the 7. That's how good this Astros lineup is. And then you pair it up with, they still have a great rotation. Even though they lost Verlander, who's the AL Cy Young. They replaced him with Hunter Brown, who is essentially Justin Verlander 2.0, but a younger version. They still have Framber Valdez, Christian Javier. They have Luis Garcia. They have a great rotation. They have a great bullpen with Presley and Leirus Garcia. They still have these top guys, right? And that's why Houston's the favorite, and I feel like Houston's going to win the division again. It's hard to compete when the best team who just won the World Series got better, or at least didn't regress so much after the World Series run to where everyone thought, okay, they're not a World Series team anymore. This team is a World Series team still. They have been set up for the future. They have a great rotation. They have a great bullpen, and they have one of the best lineups in baseball. You can't argue with those facts. So, in order, Houston's winning this AL West division once again. The Mariners are finishing in second, but it's going to be a very impressive second. Then you have the Angels in third, probably a 500 team, like always. The Rangers right behind them in fourth, and then down, unfortunately, a little down ways at the 5, the Oakland Athletics.
Yeah, I mean, the Astros are once again the odds-on favorite to win the World Series. It's kind of funny looking at the odds for the division winners because, you look at the Central and the East, and the leader with the lowest odds is at plus money. And then you go to the AL West, and you have the Astros are the favorite, and they're minus 180 to win the division. So that kind of shows you the dominance. Like it's not about the rest of the division; it's about how dominant that top team is. And like you said, they're not going to miss. Like they're not going to miss Verlander to an extent where it's going to hurt them this season. So you still have them. And then, like I said before, the Angels and Rangers are kind of the two wild cards where, if everything goes right for either of those teams, they can compete for a wild card spot. But it just feels like too much has to go right for both of them for that to happen. And so, maybe the first month or two they're competitive. Like I think it was last year the Angels were like in first place like a month of the season, and then that quickly changed like a month or two later. So I did think that the schedule change where you play less divisional games could make the division race at least a little bit more competitive because, not having to face the Astros. Facing the Astros is, I think it's 13 to 19. Obviously, the 6 less games helps a little bit in terms of not having to face them, as much. But yeah, the Astros should still run away with the division. And I agree with the Mariners. They're over under 87.5, which I like the over a lot. Like you said, back-to-back 90-win seasons, and they, there's no reason to not expect them to be better based off the moves that they made. So yeah, I like the Mariners as well. And then I probably agree with you, Angels, then Rangers, then A's. So I think that will do it unless there's anything else that you want to talk about the AL in general.
No, I was just going to say, at a Wednesday, March 1st, guys, March 1st, here we are. March is here. We're going to be going into the National League. So, don't forget, we're just going to be going to the National League. And then Friday, we're going to do a big college basketball edition. Obviously, conference tournaments will be full underway by then. Maybe getting ready for a championship game later that weekend, the final weekend of the regular season. And, one more look at a bracketology, as we head into the beginning of March, who are some of the teams that are on the bubble, who are, teams trending in the right direction, wrong direction. I expect Friday to be a big college basketball episode, but, it's definitely don't forget, we're not forgetting the combine here. We're not going to forget about that. That's also starting this week. And then, next week we're going to get into our predictions for the WBC and getting ready for that because that starts about a week as well. So we'll look at the rosters and, we'll take a look and see who has the better advantage. But, there's so much happening in sports right now. So thank you guys for sticking with us. Don't forget, like, share, comment, subscribe. I'll pass it back to Ari, but, expect a lot of content this coming week because a lot is happening around the sports world, Ari.
Yeah, as Chris said, there's a lot going on with a lot of sports that we like to cover. So we'll continue to talk about all of it in each of our episodes. So yeah, again, Wednesday will be the same thing as we did today, but for the National League, Friday college basketball, and then probably next Monday will be World Baseball Classics. I think it's Wednesday next week, I believe, when it starts. So that's right around the corner. So yeah, we'll have all of that on tap this next few episodes. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will catch you